Today's video, I have questions seeking clarification um, for Marc Brashear, Dale Gardner, and Jerome Bradley. And with this video, I'm going to have more segments from those past videos that I've referenced of Joey's that were on his YouTube. They used to be private, or they used to be unlisted, and then it used to be that they were, I think, for private viewing. You needed the link to view them. But now I see that they're unlisted. So I don't know if maybe he was persuaded to remove them or unlist them or take them so that they're not private anymore. But just for clarification, in my last video with these clips, when I said that I have the screen grabs that I needed, I meant I have like 3 hours of the whole live streams screen recorded on my phone. Screen record the whole live stream. That's the screen grab that I obtained, the whole thing, not just portions. So I don't know why Joey took his listings down from private. So I'm going to start off with this first clip.
You've never heard me say that we would not spend money on Chris's Victor. People end up hearing what they want to hear sometimes, or they mishear, right? The way to resolve that is ask, right? What did you mean, right? Or did you say this? That's the way to resolve that. You never heard me say we wouldn't spend any money on Chris's Victor. What you did hear me say.
Yep. So people end up hearing what they want to hear. Sometimes they mishear, right? The way to resolve that is ask. The way to resolve that is ask, right? What did you mean, right? What did you say, or did you say this? That's a way to resolve that. So that's why I'm asking these questions. If a little things are unclear, I don't want to misinterpret. I don't want to twist your words, misunderstand you, get a wrong picture of what's not true. So in accord with Marc Brashear's counsel, that's why I'm asking these questions. The next video is about the role of an elder.
So in hiring another full-time elder, we and this also is related to that issue that people have raised about us not caring enough for the people here. Okay, like counseling and those kinds of things. One, it's the role of the elder to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, Ephesians chapter 4. And so we share that load. It's not the pastor that does all of the counseling by himself, right? The body is responsible for that. And I know that people have been very well cared for in their small groups. I see our small groups working really well and doing a lot of that, right? We also do a lot of counseling, but that is a team effort, okay? That being said, we also realize that we are a large church with a lot of needs, and I recognize that, and we acknowledge that. So for a long time now, we've been talking about the need to hire additional full-time help in our church.
So Marc was saying it's the role of the elder to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, discipleship, ruler over few, many, that pattern of disciple making. And the person at the top is ultimately accountable. They have to raise up people under them, and then those people, it's like that clip from The Office where it's like, it's kind of like a pyramid scheme, but like in a good way. Like Jesus, it was the one, and then the 12, and then the church. So it's like a pyramid scheme in a good way. Be fruitful, multiply. It's a tree of life. So it's like a pyramid scheme, but in a good way. Because you're giving downwards, you're blessing downwards instead of like blessing upwards. The biblical model is, you bless downwards. You equip, and then they equip. So if it's an orderly, if it's a biblical ministry. The role of the elder is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. Marc is responsible for equipping others for ministry work. When I was at Cornerstone, shepherding care was administered primarily in small group through a small group leader. So you had that middle person. Marc would equip the saints, small group leaders, keep them accountable. We would have member care meetings / member reporting meetings. And then they would orchestrate shepherding care in their small group. And small group attendance was a mandatory aspect to our church covenant agreement, that we would faithfully attend a small group. So in submission to Marc's authority, we would be at our, I think we had liberty to choose which small group we did. Sometimes it was like, they would, try to balance them. We did have liberty for small group. I'll say that we did have liberty to choose which small group we went to, but it was mandatory. So we had to be in a small group with a small group leader having authority over us. That was in submission to Marc's authority. So questions for Marc. If a church member in submission to your authority ends up being under an ill-equipped small group leader that results in them being led astray, who is to blame? The elder, the small group leader, the church member, or something else? Number 2, who did the elder fail? No one, the ill-equipped small group leader, the church member, or fill in the blank. Also, you said, I know that people have been very well cared for in their small groups. So at that time in 2023, Mitchell was a small group leader, and you're saying that people have been very well cared for in their small groups. I don't know if you mean like collectively all people have been very well cared for, so I'm wondering how you would answer this question. Mitchell was blank spiritually in 2023 when at Cornerstone and under your authority. Would you say very well cared for, in accord to your quote, well cared for, or neglected, not cared for? And then this screenshot is from a letter that I received from Tyler Renfro in regards to, he was the one that was delegated some of my reconciliation attempts. So this was a letter that I received from him because I was texting him and he was giving me all that jargon about I didn't hear the other side. And I was asking him like, well, what if I had reasons outside those of the accusers that I had already witnessed that don't need to be validated? Like, what if I've witnessed things of my own accord that don't need to be validated, and that's why I don't need to hear the other side? So this is what the response was. Yep, so this was my text. Have you considered that maybe my conclusion didn't rest on the other accusations and that I have weightier indictments against Marc that I didn't speak to because they also dealt with Mitchell's sin that I didn't want revealed openly? And then his response, I'm not sure, but it sounds like you're saying you brought up accusations before everyone, but they weren't the real or ultimate thing that bothered you. I hope that's not the case. What's wrong if that's the case? But anyway, I'll reveal them now. These weightier indictments, again, are based on private meetings. I'm not certain that Mitchell would agree with you. If he did, you should have brought one more, preferably Pastor Dale, to adjudicate the matter between you, Mitchell and Pastor Marc, if Mitchell didn't agree with you. We're back to 1 Timothy 5:19. Do you see the problem, and do you see how you behaved in a disorderly way with your accusation? I'm going to print this letter out and give it to random professors at UCF, and having no context, I'm just going to ask them to write, what does this letter reveal about the author? How would you describe their mind? Is it chaotic and confusion and disorderly? Or is it coherent and reasonable? And are they able to formulate a paragraph? That's my plan with that letter. So, Lord willing, we'll see if that comes to fruition. So yeah, since I didn't bring that up, and since, I hope that's not the case, I'm gonna, make that clear now, why I left, what those other things were. So Mitchell had an issue that came to surface maybe late November or early December of 2022, and I made that known to Michael. And he was part of the elder board, and he brought it up to the elder board and said that they were gonna deal with it. So the elders knew of the issue since late November or early December of 2022. And since it was the holidays, it didn't, they didn't reach out immediately. So I'll just read the text. Yep. So here's the text. You could pause it and read the whole thing. I'll read it in case people are listening. Hi, Pastor Mark. I expressed a concern to Pastor Michael a while ago about Mitchell's sin, and Michael told me there'd be a discussion about it, with myself included. I understand the business of the holiday season and that there might not have been an opportune time in the immediate future to have that conversation, but apparently there was opportune time to have a conversation about him leading the small group discussion. So this is when Mitchell did the small group discussion about the Puritan, the videos, and he would lead the discussion. So that was him leading that. That was the reference. Him leading the small group discussion. This truly caught me off guard, as the problem is still reoccurring. Please let me know when we can talk more about this, as I am currently fighting the temptation to think that you care more about having Mitchell fill needs than you do about his soul. Marc's response the next day: good morning, dear sister. Please forgive me. That is certainly not the case. Let's meet ASAP. I can meet first thing Saturday morning, or I can meet after morning or evening service. I'll reach out through text to both you and Mitchell and ask you together about that. So questions for Marc. You said, please forgive me. Forgive you for what? Like, what specifically, in what way have you sinned that you're asking me to forgive you for? And then you said, that is certainly not the case. So my second question: how is that certainly not the case? You knew he was suffering spiritually and needed help. Yet when you saw him, you didn't engage in order to serve. You engaged in order to be served. He was a deacon. There was a lot of responsibilities with that, with the property and moving boundaries and things like that, and working with the county, doing all that stuff. He was on the media team. A lot of work with that. I think like twice a month, he would be sitting out of the service and he'd be doing media work. He was a small group leader. He'd be doing accountability. So he's serving in all these three aspects, and he's suffering spiritually. And your remedy is to add another task. Can you also do the small group discussion? We would have small groups the first hour, and then we'd all meet together the second hour. So it's like, oh, now Mitchell can lead the discussion with the second hour. Yeah, at this time, Mitchell is spiritually weak and suffering from a sin that renders him unable to lead others in positions. Like, I would think that sin makes him unable to fulfill the responsibilities of deacon and small group leader, like qualifications. Like, I would say it's disqualifying. And you respond by asking him to pick up another burden. And then here were some texts in April from Lila. She messaged me asking about the school, if we're interested in supporting. By supporting, do you mean financial support? She says it means fulfilling all the various capacities. I said, it does help. I'll talk with Mitchell. And then she said, I think you guys are at a good place with Gloria to start getting involved. This is so exciting. Maybe we were at a good place with Gloria. I don't think we were at a good place with Mitchell. So that's the text that I was getting while I'm trying to get Mitchell the help that he needs spiritually for his soul. He's doing all this stuff for the church. No one is caring for his soul. He needs help. So I'm trying to figure out how to spiritually care for him with this sin. And then Lila messages me saying that she thinks it's a good She thinks that we're at a good place with Gloria to start getting involved with the school. So I asked her, can I ask for a clarification? You said getting involved. Do you mean general or specific to the school? Specific to the school. I meant no offense. Mitchell does so much for the church already, and so do you, and you have a baby. That's what I figured. I just wanted to ask so that I don't overthink things and get my feelings hurt unnecessarily. No, I would never imply something like that. I love you, sister. I'm glad you asked. Questions for Lila. Do you think your comment, I think you guys are at a good place with Gloria to start getting involved with the school, do you think that was appropriate? What weight do your thoughts carry when it comes to my family? Regardless of meaning no offense, can you see how your statement is offensive and intrusive? When reflecting back on this statement, do you think it might reveal that you're in a good place to start seeking out personal help regarding social etiquette? I don't think that if I had to guess, I don't think that question came directly from Lila. I would think there might have been a group of people collaborating, reach out and say this. Lila's typically known for top tier social etiquette. So I don't imagine that question. I think you're at it, you and you guys are at a good place with Gloria. I don't see her asking that of her own accord. I think there were other minds involved, and that question came through her. I don't know. So here's Ezekiel 34. Some verses highlighted. You eat the fat and clothe yourselves with wool. Those who are sickly you have not strengthened. The diseased you have not healed. The broken you have not bound up. Marc, can you see how you were eating the fat with Mitchell? He had many useful skills in which he poured out his energy and strength in service to you and your kingdom. Under your authority, he was being consumed, devoured. His energy is, it's like you're consuming his energy. You eat the fat. He's adding to your estate. But it's like you're not feeding him. Question 2, when Mitchell was sickly with sin, did you strengthen him? When he was diseased, did you heal him? Seeing the extent to which Marc prioritized the spiritual care of Mitchell, I had zero confidence that the spiritual care of anyone else was in any way a priority. I was not going to sacrifice my family to the Brashear and Son School of Excellence. So for people that are still at Cornerstone, is this an acceptable biblical reason for leaving a church? Am I unsubmissive, unruly, self-willed for making that decision single-handedly? Is that reason sufficient for myself to hold the conviction that Marc is unqualified to shepherd due to neglect of duties? Do I have sufficient evidence of myself to make that conclusion? Do I have to hear the other side? Witnessing this with my own eyes, seeing that Mitchell was suffering spiritually and needed care, and he was not given care. We did meet up and we had breakfast with Gloria at, I want to say Perkins, and it was just, yeah, you got to figure out why you're doing that. You got to, figure out what's causing that. You got to get to, it was just, and then he was like, yeah, I want to, follow up and meet again in 2 weeks, and it didn't happen. So do you think observing that is sufficient for me to come to that conclusion and leave without having to hear the other side? Yep. And then this next video is about Dale talking about the men, the accusers.
There was a plan by bitter men to overthrow the leadership of this church. And they have lied and, cheated, I think you could say, and stolen their way to try to to accomplish that end. And I think in doing those things, personally, have shown that they are entirely disqualified for shepherding anyone. And I hope this church can recover. I hope that people who have been misled by either ignorant, people who don't understand the Bible are leading this charge. And if it's not ignorance, it's deliberate deception. So it's one of the two. And that's really the big issue here. Where is the unrighteousness? It ought to be plainly evident, what is wrong and what is right here.
So here's a text of what he said. You can pause it and read it if you want to go back and look at it. So questions for Dale. When did they become entirely disqualified for shepherding anyone? Because a lot of these people were small group leaders, and Dale is saying that they're entirely disqualified for shepherding anyone. Were they performing shepherding care while being entirely disqualified? Typically someone doesn't immediately become entirely disqualified for shepherding anyone. It might be revealed that they were, and for a period of time they were unqualified. But if that's the case, it's like, well, you had people that were entirely disqualified for shepherding. You had them doing the work of the ministry for a period of time in that state. When it was Marc's, it's the role of the elder to equip them. What does their disqualification say about the elder over them? If the elder's role is to equip them for the work of the ministry and they're entirely disqualified for shepherding anyone, well, what does that say about the elder? If they are ignorant people who don't understand the Bible, what does that say about the primary elders in regards to their capacity to teach, their capacity to discern comprehension, their discernment regarding who is mature, and their own spiritual maturity? And mind you, being under their shepherding care in small group wasn't optional. It's like we were forced to be under their shepherding care. So Nancy was my small group leader. And that was me in submission to Marc's authority. I ended up under Nancy's care as a small group leader. So if that led to my demise, well, who's at fault for that? And then the next video is about the sin of painting people in a bad light.
Why am I painted in that light? Why does it get presented to you that way in front of the whole church? The only explanation I have is it's an unresolved conflict. Somebody has taken offense. Bitterness has taken root. And now every situation is looked at with evil suspicion, or looked at with a lying mind, and it's misrepresented to you. Misrepresentation is a nice way of saying you're lied to. It's just presented in an ugly way. So if someone else would like to pitch in on that.
So, and here's what Marc said. Why am I painted in that light? Why does it get presented to you in that way? And it's misrepresented to you. Misrepresentation is a nice way of saying you're lied to. It's just presented in an ugly way. So questions for Marc. Is it a misrepresentation to use the label marriage counseling in reference to meetings that were conducted in order to get help for someone's personal sin outside of the marriage relationship? So this is what, Mitchell was suffering from alcoholism. And that sin, it's a symptom of not being spiritually fed. I myself had spells of drunkenness while at Cornerstone. Others that have left have confessed to the same. So if you're in that state at Cornerstone and you're convicted, I have this substance dependency, I'm a like closet alcoholic, it's probably a symptom of you not being spiritually fed. You most likely are not the problem. So I have this video about intoxicating drink and addiction that talks about that issue. Yep. So I finally figured out how to solve the problem. I don't think he actually was, I don't think it was a real issue. I think it was staged in order to distract my attention from the issues in the church. One or the other. Either Mitchell was actually spiritually sick and he was neglected by Mark, or they have like some background cult, one-on-one alliance with each other, and they convinced Mitchell to stage this this drunkenness issue to direct my attention to that, to keep it off the focus on what was happening with the church. I say that because that's been the pattern with other leadership issues when there's an investigation and I'm going there and I have my receipts and I get beat up over the head saying, why are you focusing on this? You need to be focusing on your issues at home. You need to focus on your marriage, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be focusing on this, you piece of crap. It's the same issue with the leadership and with my marriage. So it's like, it's no extra work. So that was the issue. I haven't observed that being an issue since this time. So that's why I say I don't think it was actually an issue. I think it was staged. Yep. So either Mark had him stage it or Mark neglected the issue. I don't know. The next video is Jerome talking about Michael stepping down from the role of a pastor.
These brothers, I will let you attest to it. That never took place in our elders meeting. There was never a time when we were attempting to force Mike out because of his disagreements with us. And there was never a time when, having had a discussion where it sounded like we were forcing him out, that Rick then corrected me or rebuked me for handling a brother in that way. Never happened in our elders meetings. And I'll let you guys attest to that.
I can attest to that. And in those meetings, I'm assuming those are, that's referring to meetings that happened in December around the parody stuff. In those meetings, we were trying to talk Michael off of the ledge of quitting, so it's the opposite. He introduced the topic. When he introduced the topic, he mentioned the possibility of stepping down. I personally was the first one to say, brother, it's not time to talk about that. I explained to him that there's people who need him, and let's work through the issue. Let's work through the issue and see where we can get. And we spoke that way to him over the course of at least 3 more meetings, possibly 4. I can't remember exactly how many, but it was at least 3 meetings. So no one was trying to push Michael out. It was quite the opposite.
This is what he said. I personally was the first one to say, brother, it's not time to talk about that. I explained to him that there's people who need him, and let's work through that issue. So this also plays into like the mischaracterization sin that Mark was talking about, how he's painted in a bad light. But this is Jerome talking about Michael wanting to step down from the position of authority at Cornerstone, and he qualifies it as quitting. Is it a misrepresentation to use the labels quitting, talking him off the ledge in reference to stepping down from a position of authority due to conscience? Do you think it's meant? So 2 through 4, well, 1 through 4, I would say yes, but like that's my perspective. I'm wondering what Jerome's perspective is. Do you think it's manipulative to bring up people who need him in order to keep him from leaving? Do you think that places false guilt on Michael? Do you think your words were spiritually abusive? Is there any way in which you see your treatment of Michael as wrong? So if you say no to 1 through 4, is there any way that you see your response to Michael as wrong? If I had a conscience issue over disagreements and was considering stepping down, Jerome's response would only confirm the necessity of removing myself from that elder group. I would think my voice doesn't matter, I'm not respected, and these brothers don't care about me. I'm considering stepping down, and it's like, instead of considering my words, it's like, now's not the time. It's like you're not willing to hear him, you're not willing to understand him, you're not considerate of him, you're not looking out for his best interest. It's just your words aren't being heard, you're not valued, and you're mischaracterized as, oh, you're quitting, you're abandoning all those people who like need your help. So that would only confirm the necessity of having to leave. Yep, it's not the time to talk about that. Why not? Does an elder have the liberty to step down from their position of authority at any time of their own will? Or do the other elders have the authority to force someone to remain in their position by asserting it's not the right time, leaving them to exercise oversight by compulsion? There are people who need him. Were those people giving money with the expectation of receiving spiritual care? Was Michael given money in exchange for his services that were needed by the people? Sounds like Michael was being spitefully used. You're not worried about Michael, you're worried about the effects of his departure. Disclosure, I'm not an ally with Michael. Per his own will. We are not allies. So this isn't an expression of my friendship with Michael. I'm just calling out Jerome's behavior, and it happens to be in reference to Michael. And the next video is about Dale hiring Lauren. I don't care about Lauren getting the job. My concern is about how they talk about the process. I'm drawing attention to their words and how they describe that process. I don't really care about Lauren and her job. In the last video, I said, yeah, she deserves money, whatever the job is, because she's generous and it made its way back into circulation. But I'm going to call them into account about how they describe that process. So here's the video.
So we agreed, the three of us, Mike, Dale, and myself, and I think we did that with counsel from Pastor Marcos and Pastor Jerome. We took me out of the process altogether. She's my daughter, right? So we took me out of the process altogether, and Pastor Dale, who's also in charge of that management category in those 5 areas, Pastor Dale was going to be the one to head that up. So Pastor Dale himself, he put out an announcement to the church, we're going to hire somebody in this position. We gave it several weeks, and we told people, get in your resumes. If you're interested in doing this work, get in your resumes. And at the end of that several week process of time, the only one who had submitted a resume was Lauren. Pastor Dale was the one who was in charge of hiring. We had given him that responsibility. Pastor Dale was the one in charge of interviewing and making that decision. And so Pastor Dale made the decision, and Pastor Dale hired Lauren into that position after the 3 of us, Dale, Mike, and I, agreed that that was what we were going to do. That's how that process went. There's nothing wrong with it. It was showing no partiality, and it was a right process. And we did that for the sake of removing any of that appearance of partiality.
Yep. And just to add a little context to that, to show that process was public, that Pastor Dale led to seek those applications for that position. There were a number of people who showed verbal interest in that. In fact, when this account was brought up on Sunday, 1 or 2 of those people even said, yeah, I was interested in that position, but only Lauren actually submitted her resume for that position.
Thank you, brother.
Interested to the extent that, we had a brief conversation, talked about what it might look like, but, it wasn't like, I want that job, so.
And then here is Jerome talking about it, and he said, just to add a little context to that, to show that the process was public, That Pastor Dale led to seek those applications for that position. There were a number of people who showed verbal interest in that. In fact, when this account was brought up on Sunday, one or two of those people even said, yeah, I was interested in that position, but only Lauren actually submitted her resume. So for Jerome, why do you feel the need to add context in order to prove that Dale announced this position publicly? And if you wanted to prove it, why not show the announcement? Like if it was a Slack post, if it was an email, you could be like, here was the announcement. And if he announced it publicly, like we would have been witnesses to that. Yeah, number 2. If Dale had announced it to the church publicly, you wouldn't have to show that. We would have known that. Or there would be a multitude of witnesses, or we could have looked back to the announcement. Number 3, how did Dale announce it? Slack, email? I don't remember seeing any announcement. And I was fairly engaged with church communications. I could have missed it though. Number 4, there was no hesitation to call out specific names of other witnesses, when applicable. Why weren't the names of these 1 or 2 witnesses called out? And do you remember who they were? And this next video, there's 2 of them, and it's 2 different accounts. One of Dale talking about Rick's Airbnb experience, and one of Marc talking about Rick's Airbnb experience.
A lot was made of this difficulty that we had last summer with Pastor Rick's housing, and I think that has been done. We've explained this so many times, so many people. I don't even know who's heard this and who hadn't, but maybe there's somebody live streaming who hadn't heard this. How much time do we have? Oh, we have about 1 minute. We dropped the ball on getting the check in the mail to Rick. That's the fact of the matter. He was expecting a check to arrive on a certain day and to go over to an Airbnb, pay the bill, move into the Airbnb, and I don't know why. I think I remember seeing an email from Pastor Rick saying, here's where the check needs to go, and this is how much it is, or this is who you write it to, and this is how much it is. And I just sort of thought, well, I don't write the checks. Somebody else is going to take care of that. I'm going to go do this other thing. And the check didn't get in the mail, and they opened the envelope, and the check wasn't in the mail. The other check was in the mail, but not that one. And I think Rick texted us, or I don't know. We learned immediately that the money wasn't there. And if I remember, I tried to go find these texts because I don't know, maybe I got a new phone or something since then, but I couldn't find them. But I think I texted Pastor Marc and Ron and said, we have got to get this resolved right now. It's urgent. He's got to move out. If we don't have him a place to go, he's going to be homeless. Let's get him the money. I think you 2 were here. You called the place. Somehow or another, the guy wanted to charge Ron a lot more than he had agreed to with Rick. I don't know why. I don't know if the guy didn't know who we were, or whether we were connected with Rick, or if he had reneged on the deal, but whatever it was multiple times what the original request was. And I don't know, you take it from there.
Yeah, and I sat there with Ron Davidson, Rick on speaker, and we asked him, brother, this price now is outrageous. Is there anything else we can do? Like what other ideas do we have? And that's where I think I've said this 4 or 5 or 6, 7, 8 times now. But, it dawned on me, have you considered taking a vacation and coming down here? Let us take care of you down here. Keith is out for the summer. He's a school teacher. He can preach for you. Take a vacation, come down here. We'll take care of you. We got him an Airbnb down here, stayed at Pastor Dale's house for a while, visited family for a while, and we took care of all that. So unfortunate with the missed check thing. But we, again, thinking that all that is entirely resolved, because we resolved that with our brother. But offenses on that side stacking up when we think it's resolved on our side, and that's where bitterness comes from. So what does it look like? Well, It looks like, for example, a situation in which a dear brother who is having to move out of his house because his landlord is going to sell the property. He has to move out of his house. He calls up the church, asks for help, which we agreed to give him. And it's going to be for an Airbnb. It's going to cost $6,000 for a month or whatever it was. And that situation then gets painted as Marc promised the $6,000 to me and my family. We're practically homeless now. He promised that $6,000 and he refused to give it. And we're homeless. Now, if you were there on Tuesday night, you heard it explained exactly that way. That's bitterness, because it didn't happen anything like that. And Ron Davidson knows it. Sitting right over here in his office, we go to pay that $6,000 because we're gonna take care of our brother. We said we would. We want to do that. We're gonna take care of that. Pay that $6,000 for an Airbnb. We get the guy on the phone. It's not $6,000 anymore. It's now $12,000 or $15,000. And to me, the first thing in my mind that came to mind when I heard that is like, that is outrageous. It's outrageous to pay $12,000 or $15,000 for a month in an Airbnb. So I said, let's get Pastor Rick on the phone. We've got to figure out a better way. That's just outrageous. So Ron Davidson and I called Rick Fernandez right then and there, and I said, brother, we were about to pay this bill. It looks like it's going to be 12. I don't remember the number, whether it was 12 or 15. I think Pastor Dale remembers 18, right? I remember 12 or 15. We're about to pay this. This is outrageous. We have any other ideas? Anything else we can do? And it pops into my head. It's summer. Keith Jones is the teacher. He's out for the summer. Keith, good brother, he could preach in your stead. Have you thought about just taking a vacation, coming down here? We could take care of you down here, right? Pastor Dale, they stayed in Pastor Dale's house for 3 or 4 weeks. You could stay with Jess's mom. I know the kids love Jess's mom. Just take a vacation, come down here. We ended up getting them an Airbnb down the street from Lewis and Lila. In other words, what were we doing? We're taking care of our brother. If that was an unresolved conflict, I didn't know about it because I thought that was entirely resolved until we had a meeting where it obviously was an offense to our brother, which we at that meeting resolved a year ago, but obviously not resolved because it gets brought back up to you again. And when it's described to you, correct me if I'm wrong, when it's described to you is we have a brother who's essentially homeless. We promised him $6,000. We refused to give it. I refused to give it. And it's simply not how do we explain that? Like what biblical framework do I have to explain why that happened? He's not giving me the benefit of the doubt. He's not accounting the process to you as it happened. Ron Davidson's doing the same thing. There's been an offense that's taken. That offense is clearly not resolved. What is that? That's bitterness. To the one who is bitter, when he looks at a situation like that, doesn't think the best, isn't thinking charitably or with love, giving me the benefit of the doubt in that circumstance, what he's doing is he's painting it in the worst possible light to accuse me. And that's what you heard on Tuesday night. There are myriads of examples in those accusations just like that from Ben Rivera, who's never come to me with his accusations. Ben Rivera has never read a letter. He's never talked to me about those things. Stood up in front of you and said, I believe that the church's money is my money. That's what he said to you. I heard that on Sunday.
So, Marc, you agreed to give him help that was agreed upon, that this help was to be rendered in a certain fashion. This is what Rick needed. This is what he needed to be provided. And you agreed that the church would render help as described with these parameters. And you didn't render what you had agreed to, what you committed to, what you promised on behalf of the church. Rick needed help with an Airbnb for a month for his family, and that wasn't provided. Now he has to go through all this labor of packing his family up, packing his kids up, going to stay with Dale, putting up with him, because that doesn't sound like fun. Free housing from Dale, I would rather not do that myself. It's not like that's a vacation, having to stay with Dale. And then staying with Jessica's, I don't know, maybe they stayed with Pam. That sounds fun. I will stay with Pam. That's a lot of labor. Can you see why it's not resolved? How you still haven't taken accountability for how you've wronged Rick? You're saying you've done him no wrong, but you don't see how you've wronged him. That's probably why it's unresolved, or why it's perceived as being unresolved, because you can't take accountability for how you've dropped the ball. Two, this isn't a question, but I was there on Tuesday night and it wasn't explained in exactly that way as you have described. Three, you made the comment that $15,000 is outrageous. I would agree, it is outrageous. And that additional cost is a result of a failure in our leadership, the church's leadership, their failure to complete a task in a prompt way. Everyone, I believe, has the wisdom of experience of knowing that with booking travel arrangements, lodging, that as you get closer to the date, the price goes up. So that should have been known. You should have made the wise and prudent decision to pay for that ASAP, knowing that the consequences of not paying ASAP is that the price would have gone up. So $15,000 is outrageous, and that's a reflection of your own incompetence to complete a task and get this housing secured as you have committed on behalf of Rick to provide the help that you agreed to. Four, you single-handedly made the decision that the money wasn't going to be spent in that way. It was outrageous because you delayed and failed to make payment in a prompt way. Now that the payment is too high, according to your own mind, well, we can't pay that. You single-handedly made that decision of your own accord. If I had known and we took a vote, yeah, give him the money. He needs it for his family. We agreed to this. Let's be principled men of our word. Yeah, it sucks that it costs more now due to incompetencies in our leadership, but let's be people of integrity and make sure that he has the housing that we agreed to, that you agreed to on behalf of us. You single-handedly made the decision that the money wasn't going to be spent in that way. Do you think that might be one example where you manifest what Ben is describing as you treat the money as your money? Like, if this is the church's money and the church agreed to provide help in this way, why do you get to single-handedly make the decision that that price is outrageous and therefore we're not going to pay it? It's outrageous because of your delay of payment. Where's the accountability? And then here's a question for Dale and some other comments. Like, Dale, all of a sudden the price went up. I don't know why it went up. Maybe he didn't know who we were. Maybe he reneged on the deal. Dale, do you honestly not know why the price has gone up? How it went from $6,000 to 12 or 15, knowing that a certain amount of time has passed. Now that we're closer to the date of when Rick needs this housing, you have no idea why it's more expensive now? You have no idea. Your only options are he doesn't know who we are and that shiesty man reneged on the deal. Do you not understand, like, the time factor in regards to how that plays a part in pricing for securing things such as lodging or like air, travel arrangements? If you don't know, if you have no idea of why the price all of a sudden went up, well, you lack wisdom, Dale. You're not very wise. Some more comments on those two videos. Yep. And that ends this video. Question seeking clarification for Marc Brashear, Dale Gardner, and Jerome Bradley. Okay, thanks.